Um, I think most of you know I'm Dr. Heather Ludlam. This is my husband, Mike, and I've got the honor this morning of introducing Dr. Larry Holler and his wife, Sue. Larry is a veterinary pathologist at South Dakota State University, and Sue is currently the manager of their farm flock of about 500 ewes. Larry and Sue have been breeding a flock of sheep with a genetic trait that could be very helpful in the treatment of Huntington's disease and other neurologic diseases in humans. And we wanted to take a minute and share our family story, the reason we got involved with Sue and Larry, our family's journey with Huntington's disease, and to explain to you guys what Huntington's disease is and why this could be a really important project for the sheep industry, but also for the families that are affected with Huntington's disease. So I'm going to let Mike start with our family story, and I'll jump in probably. There you go.
Thank you. We're kind of putting this out there. My older sister Dory and I were both adopted. We have a family of 5, and Dory was a go-getter. She was very, very strong woman. Got married, had 3 kids, and probably mid-30s, she started getting a little weird, I guess is the only way to put it. We didn't know what was going on. We just thought, oh, Dory's just being Dory. And as time went on, it didn't really seem to get any better. And finally, I'm a retired police officer, so I'm looking at her, and she was getting these symptoms of almost being a drug addict. And so I finally confronted her, and I said, Dory, what's going on? I said, are you on something? And she said, nope, I'm not, Mike, I'm not. And I said, well, then something's really, really wrong, and we need to get you to see a doctor. So she went in, she got tested for Huntington's, and I'd never heard of Huntington's. I didn't know, none of our family knew what Huntington's was, but we found out in a hurry. It's a very debilitating disease. There's no cure, there's really no treatment right now. And so basically, over a period of 5 years, longer than that, she was diagnosed in her mid-40s, and she finally passed away at the age of 52. A lot of things came together, and really fortunate for us, we were able to. Huntington's patients are sometimes difficult. They don't fit in the system, and the behavioral issues. She was at a nursing home, a very nice nursing home, but those folks just didn't know how to deal with a Huntington's patient. My little sister up in Minnesota, the Twin Cities, found a Huntington's specialty hospital that had a floor that just treated Huntington's patients. So we were very, very fortunate. We were able to get her up there where they knew how to deal with a Huntington's patient. And we were very fortunate to have my little sister 15 minutes away. In the meantime, we've got 3 kids, Dory's 3 kids to deal with, and her husband. And her husband ended up passing away. And so, yeah, a lot of challenges. I'm lucky that I had extra siblings to help out. It's one of those things, just every time I'd go up there, and it's a long ways to Minnesota, but, sheep have been good to me. I've had a few people hire me to go move their sheep, and they were always up in Minnesota or Wisconsin, so I was like, hey, I'm close. So I got up to see her a fair bit. And, after she passed away and we got moving forward, and, it's always in the back of my mind because Huntington's is a genetic disease. And so
it's a dominant gene. I just kind of want to talk about how terrible Huntington's disease really is. It's a dominant gene, so if one parent has Huntington's disease, their children have a 50% chance of having it. So we've got 2 nieces and a nephew who have a 50% chance of having it. And I just want to describe a little more about what Huntington's is like. It's like having Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, and then ALS kind of all rolled up into one. It's terrible. The mental symptoms that it begins with, the mental symptoms alone can tear families apart because the people become very, very difficult to deal with. And then they start having a physical decline. And eventually they can't walk, they can't talk, and they can't walk, they can't swallow. And they either die from aspiration, choking while trying to eat, or just starving to death because they can't get the nutrition. And then you have to make horrible decisions like, am I gonna put a feeding tube in? How long do we want this to go on? It's really, really, a really tough, terrible disease. And so now the children are looking at a 50% chance of this happening. A lot of people don't get tested even when their parents are positive because there is no treatment and they don't wanna know. There's also, we have genetic non-discrimination laws in this country, but come on. I don't think a lot of employers and insurance companies are probably following that to the letter of the law. So these kids really don't want to get tested. It could affect future jobs, health insurance, things like that. Most of the time when people start looking at it is when they're thinking about starting their own family, and they've got to make that tough decision. Or, of course, if they start showing physical symptoms. It did tear that family apart. The nicest way to say it is Dory's husband just couldn't live without her and chose to, harm himself enough that he finally passed away. And it did, and those kids we were left with 2 very young adults, 18, 20 years old, on their own, with their mother in a hospital hundreds of miles away, and a little girl who was, I think, 9 at the time her dad passed. And so, the story is so, unfortunately, not uncommon. You talk to other Huntington's families and they just have the same terrible story. So we just kind of wanted to share how bad it is. And the big thing with Huntington's, as we watch this, of course, I'm a veterinarian, and when Dory was diagnosed, 15 years ago now, well, there's got to be something. There's got to be clinical trials. We can get her in a clinical trial. It's so similar to Alzheimer's. They've got to be working on stuff. And I called everybody I could find in the country, and no, we've got, maybe there's some symptomatic things, maybe you can try, but not really. I mean, there were a lot of people to help manage the patient and help with support for the families, which was nice, but there was really nothing. And so we felt really, really helpless. All we could do is watch her die, and all we can do is watch and hope that our nieces and nephews are gonna be okay. But then Mike found a little press release, January of 2015 last year, an online press release through the little ASI online newsletter, saying sheep may offer a treatment for Huntington's disease. And honestly, he forwarded it to me the first time, and I looked at it and I thought, oh, these sheep have a neurologic disease. This is just another animal model. Well, that's great, but they got to come up with something. Come on. And I ignored it the first time. But then it showed up again in the ASI magazine, same little press release. Then it showed up again in our Targi newsletter, same little press release. And I thought, okay, it was a blizzardy day in January. There was not a lot of work to be done. And so I got on the computer, got on the phone to Dr. Larry Holler. His name was there. I figured out how to contact him and just started. I shared our family story with him, barraged him with questions, I think, for 2 days. But at the end of the day, Mike came home from work, and I said, oh my gosh, the science of his project kind of makes sense. And, it didn't take long. We went to South Dakota in February because that was our only free weekend.
2 weeks after.
Yeah, 2 weeks after we talked to him. And we picked up a couple of these rams to get involved in their project because at least we can try to do something. It gives us a little bit of hope. We're sheep producers. We're at this point on our farm where we are working away from the purebred show lambs because our kids are growing up and we don't want to show sheep anymore. And, they're going to leave us, and we were already transitioning to a white-faced small commercial flock, which happens to fit in very nicely with Dr. Holler's and Sue's program, of which they're going to explain everything to us. So it just seemed meant to be for us, and we finally get a chance maybe to do something about this. And for us, that's a huge, huge gift. And maybe we can help our nieces and nephew and that would be a wonderful thing. I don't know if there's anything we want to add.
The only other thing, one of the big reasons why we wanted to bring him here is this really fits into sheep production, because in order to do this, we're gonna have to produce a lot of sheep. And there's a possibility of actually doing it profitable, and I'm sure they'll touch on that. But this is a big opportunity for the sheep industry here in the United States. I also like a little shout out to the nice people from Michigan Farm Bureau who are videotaping this for us.
Dr. Holler, I think we said it all.